Welcome, everyone, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined this week by a very special guest. My wife is at home waiting with bated breath for this podcast. She's a big fan of this influencer, social media influencer, Carrian, Cheney, owner and the influencer behind Oh Sweet Basil. Carrian, thanks for joining us.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I love this kind of stuff. It's so fun.
It is fun. It's way fun. People talk to me every day about, like, how do you do the podcast? I couldn't sit there and talk to someone like this that I've never met before for an
Ah,
hour. And I freaking love it, Carrie Ann. I don't know why.
ah,
It's really cool to have kind of this front row seat to people. And I love people.
yeah,
That's the best part about what I do every day is people. And I don't know.
yeah.
I'm excited to sit down with you.
Strangely enough, that is a lot of my job as well. It's about the people, not as much about the food as you think. So I think
Yeah,
we'll have
which
a really
is
good conversation.
I should say it's probably my two most favorite things, people and food. So like
Mine too.
you encompass everything that I love in this world, Carrie Ann. So
Oh,
I'm
I'm the
excited.
best.
I'm excited about this. So
Uh,
let's talk a little bit about who and what Oh Sweet Basil is. For those of you that are listeners to the podcast, um, and for those of you that are probably fans of yours that are listening in, you probably already know all this. Oh Sweet Basil is a huge social media blog brand. I guess
mhm.
that's probably an oversimplification of what it is, but I've been introduced to your world, and it's been really fun to kind of check in on social media and see all of the cool things that you're doing there. And so, yeah, maybe talk a little bit about what Oh Sweet Basil is, who it is, and kind of the genesis of this idea.
So, Oh Sweet Basil is originally a food blog, and so we talk a lot about, recipe creation and dinner and brunch and everything in between. Um, it started out as my husband and I, we were making dinner all the time and really like finding ourselves enjoying time together in the kitchen and experimenting with new recipes and new foods and all those things. And we'd invite the friends and family and neighbors over for dinner. And someone would always say, like, oh, that was really good. Can I get that recipe from you? And I wasn't super good about following through. This is back in the dark ages when you didn't text each other recipes,
Right.
so it was a long time ago, and I heard this like random person say something about a blog, and I thought, oh, well, that's kind of fun. What I'll do is, instead of people waiting on the email that is never coming with that recipe I said I would send, I'm just going to start posting on this blog when I eat something delicious that I think other people should try. And so we'd make some new recipe and I'd get on the blog, and I mean, the photos are an absolutely atrocious part of our beginning. Like, you look on it and you're like, did a cat die? What are we talking about here? What was this exactly that she's describing? It looks like a pile of death, but
Oh gosh.
but we all had to start somewhere. So I
Right.
started,
100%.
putting everything on the blog, and after a while, people all over the world started commenting, and we were like, wait, is this a thing? This is like a thing. These aren't just our friends looking at the blog now. There's some random person in Kansas that has left a comment that they made the recipe. So we kind of decided, okay, let's make this let's make this an actual lifestyle for us where we're cooking and trying and creating things together in the kitchen. And each successive kid that we had, we kind of pulled into the mix, and we, introduced them to cooking and eating along with us. And so I would say it's a food blog, but it really is so much more than that. It's our lives. It's our readers' lives. It's our way of living and connecting with each other. And it all starts and ends with food.
It's really, really cool. You hit it something right at the end there that I think a lot of people miss. But I think it's something that everybody notices when they do it. There's something like primal in our DNA. I don't know what it is that it feels good to cook for other people. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is, Carrie Ann. But every time like I sit down and cook a meal for my wife, which frankly doesn't happen as often as it should. I need to be better. And now I'm going to have a direct line for some awesome recipes. But
Yes.
there's something, yeah. And primal's a bad word to describe it, but like, it's just something deep within me that's like, this feels good. And I don't know why.
Mhm.
Why does it feel good for me to like go pull some tomatoes and some onions out of my garden and make like a salsa for my wife or something? You know what I mean? Like, why
Yeah,
does something like that feel good? Do you have like do you have an answer to that? I guess that might be that's
I
probably a big,
do.
spiritual
No.
question that's a lot to talk about, but
I am absolutely obsessed that you are asking this right
yeah,
now because I do have an answer. What I think is an answer. I feel the same thing. And here's what's interesting. You put a group of people in a room that are awkward and no one knows each other, and it's like, oh, should we play some icebreakers? And everyone's like,
right.
this is the worst. And then someone stands up and says, what's the one thing you ate as a kid that was like the best ever? What's one thing your mom made? Or what's that recipe you think of time and time again? And everyone has one. And why is that? It's for the same thing that you're talking about right now because of this innate need to connect. Well,
Yep.
here's a few reasons I think that's true. First and foremost, I really think that our purpose of life is to leave people in places better than we found them, to love and to heal. Food is essential to survival. And when we fulfill that need in someone else to eat and to be taken care of, I think our bodies, our souls, our minds connect with that. And it says, this person is truly caring for me because I can't survive without this. Now, are we really thinking about that? Are we like, man, if I hadn't had those, brisket nachos, I really would have been out of luck here. I would have
Right,
been
right,
dying on the side of the street. No, it's not like that. We're not processing through, but maybe it's because we're not being mindful. If
right.
we were a little bit more mindful about our lives, I think we would say what they're doing is they're truly caring for me, right? And on top of it, foods hit all of us in a complete way. It hits your sight, your smell, your taste, your touch. All of it is complete. All of our senses are completely covered in eating. So if you really think about it, if you're cooking for someone else, you're giving them a whole experience where they get to be all in. And that feels really, really good. And there's a connection that can happen through food that I don't believe can happen in any other way, especially teenagers. So I don't know who's listening, if they have any teenagers or about to have teenagers. Let me tell you, when you get to that point in life where you're not really connecting anymore and you stand side by side in the kitchen, shoulder to shoulder, and you're just making something, barriers go down and you start to really connect and you start to really talk with one another. It's like magic. And
That's cool.
so, again, food answers some kind of need for us.
I I'm fascinated with this concept, and yeah, you said a couple of things there that I think are relevant to this, but I'm fascinated with the concept of remnant DNA, and
Mhm.
this it's an interesting scientific thing where they say it's like the idea of a child. Most children, I don't, most is probably an exaggeration, but there are children that are afraid of snakes that have never seen a snake before, right?
Mhm.
It's this remnant part of our DNA that's like for thousands of years, a snake meant if you got bit, like you're probably going to die, right? There was no
Mhm.
doctors, right? There was, for a good portion of human history, that it was a bad thing. I think there's almost the same in a positive way with food, right? For thousands of years, those brisket nachos might have been our only food
Yeah.
for that week or whatever it
Yeah.
might have been. So for the fact that somebody would be willing to make something and give it to us, there's this remnant part of our DNA that is so like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing this. And I think it's the same for when you cook for someone, right? Like there's this part of our DNA. It's like I am giving life to this person.
Yeah.
In modern times, it might not be as relevant, right? It's just you're giving something delicious to them. But I think there's a piece of that is still buried deep within us. I think it connects us spiritually to each other,
Uh-huh.
Connects us spiritually to our ancestors, right? And there's this
Absolutely.
piece of our, yeah, it's this piece of our remnant DNA where it's like, this meal is a big deal. And
Well, it's our bookend too, if you think
yeah,
about it. What's the very first thing that happens to you when you're born is that you're fed.
right,
And the
right,
very first thing you do when you gain your own posterity, when you have your first child, the very first thing you do for them
is
is you
feed
feed
them.
them.
Yeah,
So you
that's
you bookend
perfect. Yep.
yourself with that, right? And it's actually, in my opinion, this really leads into what I think is the key to success in owning any business is to find the things that people are truly going to need, and you answer that call and you'll find a success. This is something that people need. Now they can get it from anyone and anything, but what I teach on the blog is this is far more than that. This is far more about the hands that prepared the food than the food itself.
Yep.
And because I'm answering that desire for connection and feeling and love in life, people come because they understand that they're going to get far more out of this than, smoked salmon.
Right.
They're going to get moments and memories.
Oh, so freaking cool. Gosh, that's awesome. Okay. Well, you mentioned it there, and I think this is a good point. We can kind of maybe work more into like the growth of Oh Sweet Basil and this blog.
Yeah.
Um, you started it with the idea that yeah, this blog was going to share with your friends and family. Ended up being a little bit bigger than that. Um, how did you get to a point where this became like a full-time job? Like, what were some ways that you grew it to the point that maybe it started helping pay some of the bills?
Mm-hmm.
How did you grow it to that point where there's some steps along the way? Like, where you're like, hey, we could sell a cookbook? I know that's probably part of it now, but what were some of the steps along the way that kind of helped you grow it into what it is today?
You know, there definitely were steps. We hit a point a little bit into the blog where, yeah, it was still a hobby.
Right.
And it felt like, oh, we're doing this regularly now, but it's not with the intention of it being a thing.
Right.
It's just something fun. And then my husband ended up unemployed, and we were actually unemployed for 2 years. And so it became absolute necessity. We got to a point where we made our first $100, and we were like,
Yes. Yes.
we made it. Like, and I joke all the time, but we made that money from Google ads, and it was so cool. We went out to dinner and we ended up with food poisoning. It was this whole story, and it was like,
That's
oh, right?
awesome.
Like when you think life's really coming, don't you worry, it'll
Yeah,
not be
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So it became necessity, and because it was a necessity, we got very meticulous about how we were going to run this thing. Like, okay, what's going to be step one? And step one was we've got to learn to create content on a schedule. I need them to be able to count on us so that we can build a relationship of trust. And so number one was, okay, what is this? What is this really going to look like? Any business that you're in, I think you've got to start out by gaining loyalty with people. And so it became, for us, we're going to show up at this time with new recipes every single week. And we're going to be very smart about it. We're going to be like, okay, I'm going to work out all of the kinks ahead of time, and I'm going to talk about the kinks so that hey, if you're seeing the chicken turn this color or you're hearing this noise, that means it's time to flip it, so that people were feeling really successful. Now, in other businesses, they might have to do that differently. They might have to say, okay, I'm going to come do this service for you in plumbing, but I want you to watch for these three things after I leave.
After.
So that
Yep.
yep, so that if there's a concern or a problem, or if this happens, I want you to do this. Why? Because you're the expert and this person needs loyalty, right? And so
Yep.
I'm always drawing them back into that. So we became very scheduled out. And then from there it was, okay, what can we offer that's different than anyone else? So I always say that there's like a 4 or 5 step process to building a business. And we really acted this way and continue to act this way. A photographer could say, I want to be a photographer. And that's fantastic. But there are millions of photographers.
Yep.
Why am I going to want you over someone else? And so the photographer needs to take it down another level. Okay, I don't just want to be a photographer. I want to be a family photographer. Well, that's great, but we're still competing. You made it a little better, but you're still competing. So why do I want you? Take it down another level, and maybe they'll say, okay, I want to be a family photographer that specializes in children. And then we go again, one more level deep.
Yeah.
I want to be someone who specializes in children with special needs. Now you've got your audience.
Oh, yeah.
So we did that with ourselves. You're right. It isn't as big of a field as a family photographer, but you can charge more when you have become very specialized. So we did that with our site. We went, okay, well, I don't just want to talk about food. Now, I could have gone down to keto or gluten-free, or
Right.
I'm only going to do meatless dinners or something like that. We still wanted the broad scope of family dinner. But what we did instead is we said, I am going to become very much an expert. If you want banana bread, I am going to make the best banana bread and I'm going to walk you through the process, right?
That's awesome.
And my center focus is on family. This is about living a life. So they can go to any other blog and they can find a quick recipe that may or may not work out, but it's really not going to focus in on how do I create a successful life at home, which is where I come in. I'm talking about all the things. I'm saying, hey, I'm with you. I want to roll my eyes and kind of open the door and kick them out when the kids are whining and crying about, how dare you make pasta? I hate pasta. So instead, I'm saying, okay, here's how we're going to solve that. And I'm just
Yep.
talking about it in a natural way. So again, we gained loyal fans by showing up on time every week. We took things to a new place of what can I offer you that no one else is offering right now, which is this entire way of living. This is, let's talk about real life, real family, and real food. And then on top of that, I started putting myself out there. We wanted to show up on every blog, do guest posts for people. We were reaching out to brands, and in the beginning, brand work wasn't a thing.
Right.
We weren't making money off of anything other than ads. So I'd reach out to a brand and I'd say, "Hey, I'll talk about your product if you will then share that recipe on Twitter or whatever, If you will then send us coupons for it, or eventually I said, if you'll pay us, I will mention your blog on the brand." So that we were getting as much visibility as possible. And we were starting to make money in different avenues. I really wanted to diversify that as much as possible. So whenever a brand would come back and say, sure, we'll pay you to do it. How about this amount? Then my rule of thumb became, I'll double it. Whatever they say that they're going to say to me, I'm going to double it, because the fact of the matter is we all want something for as cheap as possible.
Right.
So then I started really working this business side of it, saying, how can I be seen more? How can I become more of an expert that people are turning to for questions and answers? And how can I build this into a business where I'm earning an income? And finally, our last step was hiring out. You make more money as you lose money, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you are making money, then it's time to sacrifice and say, okay, what can I have someone else doing that's taking my time so that I can focus on what I'm really, really good at, and let them take care of those menial tasks. And at first you go, but I want the money. I want to keep it for me. I
Right.
don't want to give it to
Right.
someone else. But the fact is they take things off your hands, but then you get to be creative again and say, okay, what else can I be doing?
Yeah.
And then it grows from there, right?
There's so many things I want to talk about, but I just right there at the end, 100% Carrian. It's almost 100% across the board with all of the people that I've interviewed, and just like my clients in general that are trying to grow their business. When they get to a point where they're like, gosh, I need some help around here, when they relinquish some of those tasks to somebody else, almost without fail, their business starts to grow even more. Right. And it's this rule of thumb that, it's hard to live by, especially people that are just in the infancy of starting their business. Right. But like,
right.
it almost without fail, when you start bringing in people to take over some of those tasks, that then frees up your time to manage the business, to think creatively, to look for other revenue streams, your business is going to grow like almost
Yeah.
without fail. And it's you mentioned it that right there at the end, unprompted, and I wanted to make sure people hear that again. I hit on it almost every episode that like, hey, at some point you're going to get, if you own a business, at some point you're going to get to a point where if you want to grow, you've got to bring in some people to help you. Hiring employees,
Yeah.
outsourcing something. You've got to do something that frees up your time so that you can be creative and grow the business.
Now, there's two things that go along with that, though. If we're going to talk about real growth, then first we have to hit on when is the right time to hire an employee. And my
Yeah,
answer would be
totally.
as soon as you start bringing in money.
Yeah.
You've got to make that sacrifice almost immediately because it will push you to the next level. So it's not wait and wait and wait. It's okay, we're bringing in a revenue, we're bringing in income here. It's time to hire. What is the first task that needs to go? Generally the task that is going to push your name out there the most, right? So someone to help you get things out on social media because you need to be as visible as possible. Your job isn't to be promoting yourself. Your job is to be answering a need in someone. And so you stay where you're supposed to be and let someone else handle it. The second thing I would say is this is where it gets really tricky is the more you're pumping things out and the more you've got people working for you, it becomes almost easy for you to forget what your purpose is. Your
Yeah.
purpose always has to remain. And with that, I would say, we've learned a few things. We've learned that my purpose is not to be a business owner. My purpose is not to give you recipes. My purpose is to love and heal those around me. My purpose is to be a mother, a wife, a friend. And if you can stay really centered in who you are outside of the business, you will be a better business owner. People will be more drawn to you. You will keep your values. You will stay loyal to those around you. It really will make your business grow better if you remain outside of the business as much as possible. And then on top of that, I feel like your purpose on the business side needs to stay really, really genuine. There are going to be 500 other people doing things bigger, better, louder than you are. It's okay. They're on their journey. You're on your journey. Stay true to that. We've tried doing, let's talk a little bit about healthy eating. Let's talk a little bit about, fitness and things I love. And that will come up on social media. But I've learned that's not the place on the blog because people aren't there for that. And so it makes up a part of who I am. But I was getting lost in becoming lots of people instead of staying true to what the blog was.
Love it. Love it. You offered some great insights there that, the idea of being outside of the business as much as possible is an interesting concept that I hadn't really thought of. That you almost need to have like this third person view so that you can be able to make decisions, right? So you can focus on the content and produce better content and focus on, or maybe not the content, but what your purpose is, right? Whatever type of business you might own, and focus on your purpose. But that also allows you to have like a real world perspective on, okay, is my business functioning correctly? Like, can it function without me? Right? Like, can I could I take a vacation for a week and the business doesn't crumble underneath me? Right? Like, it's a great way to kind of analyze the health of your business and where you're at in that. And I don't know if everybody's
mechanical,
there.
Right? Yeah.
Right. And I don't know if everybody's there with their business immediately, but I think eventually it needs to get to that point. If this is going to be, if you want this to be a flourishing and successful business, it's got to get to that point eventually.
Yeah, you've got to stay in touch with two things. I've got so many things, two things here and three things there. And this is a numbers game. But here's the thing is, first and foremost, you are your brand. People will say all the time, we've used the plumber a few times, so let's just keep with this podcast. But if you're a plumber, it would be really easy to say, well, my business is fixing plumbing or putting in plumbing for people, and I can take care of any sink and all that. No, you are your business.
Yeah. Yep.
You are your brand, period. Because an individual is going to stay totally 100% loyal to you far into the future. If you are really, really good to them, they can find a plumber anywhere. that doesn't matter. But if you become the person that they need, then not only will they keep you, they're going to tell every friend, neighbor, hey, oh, I thought you're remodeling. Let me give you my plumber's name. He's awesome. And that's what I'm interested in, right? My business isn't just about gathering in the masses to make our recipe. I want so that when the blogger next to me, people are kind of forgetting about them because they've been pumping out content, but they've not connected with anyone. Mine are still coming back to me. You know, when
Right.
we've had all these algorithm changes and everything, we keep our traffic really, really solid because people are there for us. And then not only that, but you need to stay in touch with who your in my case, readership or your customers are. When I step outside of the blog world and I continue to live this life, I remember, oh, actually, it is really, really frustrating to use a new oven and you feel like you're the bad cook. And I'm grateful for that reminder that I was just playing around cooking with the kids one day and a new oven I was using wasn't working right. And I went, oh, I need to remind my readers to do this. And now I've got valuable information again. But if
Right.
you get too mechanical, you forget what your customers really are looking for and what they're living in life. And then you can't answer all those needs anymore.
Yeah. The concept that I've found, or it's not me, the concept that we as a company have found that has been the most successful for content, website content, and social media to an extent is the concept of story brand. That the hero of the story is not your business. The hero of the story is your customer. And then your business is just a guide to help them through that story, right? And if you change your mind to be more focused on your customers and that they are the heroes of the story, again, it's going to elevate your business to that next level. That your customer is the hero, and you're helping them through that journey.
Give them
And
a
what are they
voice.
going through?
Let them
What are some
talk.
questions
Yeah.
that they're going to ask? What are they? What are some things that they are going to be confused about? If you start preemptively thinking about those things, you're just going to be that much more successful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
So, Carrian, there's so many things that you hit on that were so good, and I want to at least touch on a couple of them. I don't want to keep you here for 3 hours for a podcast, but there's a couple of things there that I think would be really cool. So you mentioned transitioning from a blog to social media, and you still do both. I shouldn't say transition; you do it all. But
Yeah,
how
like grabbing that into.
yeah, a little bit of everything, right? The Instagram seems to be a huge part of your business now and what you're doing. But I think the big thing that I always go back to is like content is king, right? What are some have there been some rules or maybe some tips that you could give to people that are looking to build a brand themselves? How does someone produce good content? Because it seems like you guys have loyal listeners or loyal followers both on social media and on your blog, and I think it probably comes back to your content, right? Like how does someone build their brand through like producing good content? Or do you have some tips or some rules to kind of live by?
Yeah, consistency is key, first of all. People get bored fast. And
Okay.
so you need to be there every single day. You need to consistently be showing up with consistent content as well. So not just showing up on time, but also could they pick your pictures out from anything? Could they pick your voice out from anything because they've become so used to you?
Oh,
So
okay.
consistency is really, really important. And then also bringing them into behind the scenes. So letting them get to know you and your family, doing Instagram stories where they get to see a little bit more about the process. Education is key. It used to be that we really only want moments on Instagram. I want to feel things. Well, people want to be educated now. We've seen a little bit of a shift in COVID where it has gone from strict entertainment to teach me something. Is
Yeah.
there a better
Yep.
way to be pitting that avocado? I want to know it. So take everything that you're doing in life. And if you're like, oh, I've always put a Tupperware lid on top of my tomatoes to hold them down and then just use my knife on the side to slice through all the tomatoes at once. Yes, you've always done that, but Joe hasn't.
No.
Joe needs
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah.
So everything is content. Everything that you're doing, be pumping out now. Now this is a tricky one for me to talk about because our readers know that family is king for me. And we've gone through life transition craziness this summer with a relocation for a job. And so I am able to play a little bit of a different game on Instagram. Our readers allow me to be gone from like all of the reels and constant stories and lives a little bit more because they've grown to know me so much that they know that I'm taking care of a family. Now,
Right.
others are on there all the time, and so they have to stay loyal to the fact that they are always there for their readers for entertainment. So you have to figure out who am I going to be in this space, consistently be that person, and consistently show up. So I do still pump out content all the time. I am still showing them, hey, did you know this tip? And I'm making this right now. Come along with me. Get close up, bring them into the action as much as possible. If you sell soap, show them what it looks like to be making the soap so that they know it's a process and there's something textural, tangible,
Yeah.
sensory whenever you can show someone something in the process. So it really does not matter what your job is. If you can hit on any of those senses and show them, oh my goodness, that looks so satisfying to stir that, or did you see how that crumbled, or
Yeah.
can you look over here? I can smell it. I wish you could smell it. And you create that FOMO. I mean, fan the flame of FOMO as much as possible, but right? I mean, you want people to be as involved in the process as much as possible.
Oh yeah.
Answer questions. And finally, please, 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 to the world, get your readers talking. Get on social media, and you're going to want to talk about yourself and your product as much as possible. It's not about you.
Yep.
It is. You're the brand, but get them talking. Where are they from? What's their dog's name? Like, let them talk about themselves as much as possible. And best part about that is they'll often inspire you to take your stuff to places you never dreamed.
Oh yeah. That's you spoke to my heart a little bit talking about FOMO. I am the king of FOMO, Carrian. I have it so bad. FOMO for maybe I guess most people probably know what it is, but fear of missing out. I have it bad. And I come by it naturally. My dad's that way, my grandmother's that way. Like
Nice.
if there's a party to be had and I am not there, I am mad that I am not there. And so
Yeah,
it's
we all have it.
we've all got it to some degree, varying degrees, right? And I think if
Yeah.
you can build some of that with your
Mm-hmm.
audience,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get more engagement, right? You're going to get people
Yeah.
more interested in your content. Like, hey, I missed last week's one-on-one, or I don't know, whatever it might have been. I missed this thing. Can I join this one? Or, whatever, like I
Right.
missed out on the last cookbook drop. Can I get in on this cookbook? Like things like that, developing some FOMO and helping people feel like they're missing out because you're producing good content
Mm-hmm.
is, I mean, it's hugely, hugely important. So
Really.
really, really cool. Before we kind of dive into a little bit, there's a couple other things that I wanted to ask. I wanted to hit a very big part of who you are and a big part of your life. And I think this speaks to a lot of my clients as well. I have a lot of clients that have started businesses with, maybe it's a husband and a wife, or, it's a small enough business that their family's involved. It's a generational style business. I know that
Mm-hmm.
you're obviously a mother and a wife, and how do you balance this work life load that you've got on yourself, right? Where content and the content that you produce is a huge part of your family. Do you have to shut it off at certain times? Like, how do you balance it all when it comes to being a mom, being a wife, owning a business, trying to make it successful? How do you balance it all?
Oh, I don't. I mean, I try.
Well, you do a
I
good job of
fail.
faking it if you don't, because it looks like you're balancing it very well.
This is something that I'm quite prayerful over because this came from such a hard time in our lives, because we were so stressed about caring for our family and being unemployed and how we were going to survive. I had to dive deep in for a little bit there, and we were cranking out content. I mean, I remember taking 2 weeks, which I think is a good tip actually. But I took 2 weeks and shut out all of life. Everything stopped. I had people help with the kids and all of that. And I just got so much content ready so that we were ahead of the game, so that we weren't ever playing keep up, or we weren't even ever right on. We were ahead. And that made me really bury myself. I'm very task oriented, I'm very organized, and I like to get crap done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really hard to have that kind of personality and seek balance, because I'm an all in personality, right? If we're
Yeah.
going to do this, let's do it. So I have to really stay centered. And for me, a schedule helps with that. I don't actually make a list and check things off, but if I can stay balanced in my morning, my rest of the day usually will follow that pattern. So I get up at the same time every day and I take care of what's important first. I get a workout in, eat breakfast. For me, my religious side of life is important to me. And so I study my scriptures. I get the kids up and ready for school, and they get my undivided attention. It's I'm sorry that you didn't want toast. I thought you did. I guess I'll get the cereal out. Either way,
Yeah.
they get my attention in the morning. I send them off. And then at that time, I have to take a deep breath and say, okay, what can I get done while they're not here? Um, I try really, really hard to be mom when I need to be mom, and to
Yeah.
be a business owner the other times. That doesn't always work. And I think the key to balance is to offer yourself some self-compassion. I'm working on that. I'm not very
Yeah.
good at it, but I'm working at that. And to rest. Another thing I'm not very good at is resting. I just want to get it all done in the
Right.
daytime. And I'm realizing that if I will take a second to rest, and even if it's just mindfully eating your lunch, sitting and really being in the moment, somehow my brain the rest of the day will say, you're not doing what's important right now. You're trying to get too much done at once and multitask, and it's not happening.
It's
You're
not
not
going to
actually
work.
being efficient, but you have to give yourself time for that, or you won't feel it, you know?
That's great, great advice, Carrian. Thank you. Yeah, the balance thing is hard. I mean, I don't even own a business, nor do I have children, and I find a
Mm-hmm.
hard time balancing like work life and personal life. And
Yeah.
both of my wife's family and my family live here locally, and it's you're trying to like balance holidays and all the things, and it can be difficult. But I think scheduling is a big one. That's awesome advice. And I think I interviewed a friend of mine earlier this week, or earlier this week, for the podcast as well. And he's in the infancy of his business that he's been running for a couple years now. He owns a carpet cleaning business, and he talked about how he's like, yeah, I've learned I have to like schedule out my day. He's like, that's the only
Mm-hmm.
way I get stuff done. And it's the
Mm-hmm.
only way he has time to, have free time, right? Like it's the only way that
Mm-hmm.
he's ever going to be able to relax or recharge at the end of the day, is if like, hey, I'm going to schedule out my day. I'm going to get all these things done. And then I'm going to be able to, spend time with my family, or go out and ride my horse or whatever it might be. It's the only way he's going to be able to get
Right.
all that done, is if he schedules it out. Time management,
Yes.
crucial.
Life has taught us, with conveniences in a modern day living, we've been taught that everything can fit into a day, and that's not true. It's not true. And if you do that, you will eventually lose out on everything that life is about. You only get time for right now.
Yeah.
I don't know that time is as real as we make it into. It is always fleeing. It is our enemy and our best friend all at once. And so you have to decide, it, time is only what I make it. And I might have the most successful business in the entire world, but one day when that's gone, what will I show for it?
It's great. Thank you so much, Carrian. We have talked about some really good things today, and you've provided some awesome insights into who you are and how you run your business that I know are just really going to help people grow their businesses as well. I want to close. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I want to close with asking you a few questions. Okay.
Okay, let's
Questions
do
I
it.
ask everybody, every interviewee. I ask these same questions, and we've gotten some really, really awesome answers. So,
Okay.
first question: is there a book or podcast that you're reading or listening to right now that you really love?
Yes. Um, there are good podcasts, but it's a book I'm thinking of. I
Okay.
just finished for the second time, which if you read a book twice, don't you feel like, whoa, that really was worth your time?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've already mentioned this. I think I just love it because it validates my own feelings.
Okay, deal.
I was right. I was
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I just read Steve Young's new book. Do you remember Steve Young, the football
Oh
player?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
remember
I've heard it's really, really good. I've heard it's way good.
it's fantastic. It's called The Law of Love. And boy, I found myself inhaling instead of exhaling in his book. You know, we spend our whole lives running around and it seems like you're always at an exhale. And there was just something really quite refreshing. I don't know a lot about football, but I'm a fan. I'm a fan. It was really worth my time. So,
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, he really an incredible person, and has led an incredible life, both
mhm.
in professional sports and not in professional sports. And yeah,
Yeah.
I have not read his book, so that's a great recommendation. That's We've had a lot of people mention a lot of books on this podcast. First time someone has
Mm.
mentioned, I'm pretty sure, first time someone has mentioned a biography, somewhat, right? I guess it's not really
Hmm.
about his life, but his, personal story. That's really, really cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. He leaves you in a place of change, and I appreciate that very much. It wasn't self-helpy change. It was just maybe I could see things a little differently.
That's cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Second question. We hit on this a little bit, kind of, but I want to kind of dive in a little bit deeper. But um, you've got long days, I'm sure, where trying to balance work and personal life and get your
Mhm.
kids to their activities and create content for the blog. How do you balance it all? And then more so than balancing, because we talked about that, how do you like relax and recharge at the end of a long day?
Oh, I mean, I'm so bad at this. I'm so bad at being still, but this is my goal. So I'm glad you brought this up because I'm committing again this morning that I'm going to make it happen. I'm a little bit of an old lady, and I
Okay.
have found myself really appreciating an evening walk. I don't know where it has
That's
come
awesome.
from, but there is something about that glowy time of day when the sun is setting and it feels, this is a little hokey, so please forgive me, but it kind of feels like the world is telling itself good night to me. Like it's
Oh,
saying, you did all you could do today. You took care of the people, you showed up, the sun came, the plants grew, you did all you could. And it's almost like it tucks itself in for the night. And I've been connecting with that lately, like just taking this quiet walk where you have no choice but to let everything go and say, I did all I could do today. I showed up, I tried, the kids were good or they were hard, but I did all I could. And
yeah.
now it is done. And tomorrow will be a new day. And I think emotionally and mentally, I've needed that. So a good walk
Oh, that's amazing.
until it's winter and then I don't go outside.
And then we don't go outside. That's that
I
understandable.
don't believe in being cold.
You hit it. We talked a little bit about it at the beginning of the podcast, about like having a connection to food and why we feel this connection. I think it's almost the same with what you're describing with like being outside when the sun sets. Like it almost allows you like, hey, the world is crazy and restless, but it's going to sleep, right? Like you
Yeah.
should also relax and go to sleep at the end of the day, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
almost like this weird. I find myself doing the same thing. My wife and I, we like to spend a good portion of our summers like camping out in the woods, and we glamp to an extent. We have a camp trailer, right?
Nice.
It's not just sitting in a tent the whole time, but there's I find myself almost more relaxed up there, and I think a part of it is you're outside, you watch the sunset, it allows
Mhm.
you to be like, okay, I can I can now shut my brain off because the world is doing the same. And
Yeah.
there's some kind of connection to that that's really important, I think. So
Yeah. Yeah. When did we decide that we don't deserve to be at peace? When did we decide
yeah,
that? Like it
yeah.
seems to be a thing though, right? And so
Oh yeah, work
yeah,
hard,
that's
grind, don't stop. Like yeah,
yes. If you don't want to die doing this workout, then you're not working hard enough. And if you didn't pump out enough content, you didn't do enough. And I'm gonna go ahead and fight back on that. I
yeah,
think we deserve the stillness and the peace. And you're right. There is something about getting out into the mountains or a lake or you get to breathe as the world is breathing, you know.
yeah. Cool. Last question, and I'll stop bugging you for the morning. But
I love it.
this has been really really cool for me. Um, if you could rewind to the beginning of it all, rewind to the beginning of your career, um, with Oh Sweet Basil or whatever it might be, rewind to a particular point in your life and tell
Mhm.
yourself one thing. What would that be?
Hmm. Good question. I honestly think I would just tell myself that my efforts are enough.
Yeah,
There, that seems very, very simple. Um, but like I said, you kind of get into this thing with businesses where you can't help it. You want it to be a success. You see everyone else's success, and any success that they have somehow feels like you must be having less success. You can't ever be smart enough, do enough, work hard enough, uh, gain enough money. There's just never enough. And I think I would just tell myself that my efforts are enough because where I'm standing right now, I mean, I've had people just this week, two, in fact, in the same night, write me that they lost their spouse a couple months ago, and their spouses are my age.
yeah,
And I've had people talk to me about loss of children, or that they made a recipe that they found on my site that their grandma had made their whole lives, and she was their person. For some reason, their grandma was the one they connected with even more than their mom and dad, and they haven't had that recipe since
yeah,
she passed and didn't leave it for them. And they had this moment of making it and feeling like she was there again. Forget the success, forget the perfect food photography or writing that's expertly done. So and so has 5 million fans on Instagram. I just don't care anymore about that. I have no desire to grow my Instagram to be the biggest, not only because it's going to fall apart at some point anyway, and I'd rather concentrate on Google SEO where it matters,
right.
but also because I reached the one.
Yeah,
And who would have thought, as a 13-year-old walking through a stinky junior high, that one day I would matter to someone across the world?
yeah.
My efforts are enough.
It's really really cool. You mentioned it a little bit earlier in the podcast too. Like let's give ourselves some grace, right? Like give
Mm-hmm.
ourselves like the chance that like tell ourselves we're good enough. Like we're doing fine. Like you're
Yeah.
doing great. And I think again, almost to a person, this is episode 28 or whatever, almost to a person, everyone has said something to that effect. Like be
Hmm.
patient with myself. um I wish I would tell myself that it's all going to be okay, or I wish I would
Hmm.
not be so hard on myself. Like almost to a person, everybody said something to that effect.
Hmm.
um if they could rewind and tell themselves that. And I think it's
Yeah.
so crucially important, especially in today's culture of hustle and grind and work harder, and you're not working harder, and you're not working hard enough. Like take the time to tell yourself, hey, you're doing all right. Were
Yeah.
you able to feed yourself today? Were you able to feed your family today? That's all that matters. Like you took
Yeah.
care of yourself, everything's going to be okay. And I think
Yeah.
ultimately, like that's more important than anything else. So,
Seems like we all desire it. So I'll make you a deal, Hayden.
okay, deal.
You and me.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
If you'll do it, I'll do it.
Okay.
Because I still struggle. I believe in it. I love it. I think it's the one thing I really would tell myself. But it is hard to keep your self-talk in a
Yeah.
compassionate way.
Yeah.
And so if you're in, I'm in, and we'll do
Okay.
it.
Let's do it. We'll hold each other accountable. Let's
Okay.
that's awesome. I need to do better of that for myself. I try to do I try to be that for other people around myself, but I oftentimes don't do
Same.
it for myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I need to be better about that. So we'll do it.
Yeah.
Deal. I'm
Okay.
in. This is our pact. We're gonna be better about it. Okay.
Make a pact, and if we keep it in a year, we'll meet for tacos.
Okay, deal. I am 100% in. Carrian, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been eye-opening to me to see how you run your business, but more importantly, just who you are. And I know that our listeners, as small as our listenership might be, are going to get some great value from things that you have said, both
Yeah.
business wise and just in their personal lives. And I think ultimately
Yeah.
that's more important than anything else. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Awesome. Well, we I hope to have you on later. Yeah, we've got to follow up again about our pact, and I hope to talk to you a little bit later. So
Okay. Thank you so much.
thank you. This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe on any major podcast platform or check out our website at successonpoint.com.